Our top story this week involves journalists. They're the people who produce the news that's overwhelmingly read by journalists. So wait a second, don't journalists only exist because they pay for themselves at this point? I'm confused. Anyway, obviously the biggest news in journalism this week was the announcement that Lee Lin Chin has tragically resigned from SBS. But there was also big news in the Australian media landscape with the announcement that Channel 9 plans to merge with Fairfax. Although I'm not sure that merge is necessarily the right word. I mean, at face value, this seems more like a takeover, given that Nine will own 51.5% of the company, and the company will be called Nine. And the announcement was accompanied with a John Burgess catchphrase clue. Now, whether or not this takeover works is... Did you get it? Whether or not this takeover works is completely unknown at the moment, because there are big cultural differences between those organisations that make me think this collaboration could work out about as well as Paula Abdul and MC Scat Cat. And while there are broader implications, there were immediate concerns about the impact that this deal would have on journalism, which is that thing that movies tell us is important. And look, I could spend time here explaining the parlous position that journalism finds itself in generally, but I think that would be redundant. Suffice it to say, think of Google and Facebook as Gollum and traditional media as that fish that he's just smashed against a rock and is now eating. Which brings us to Fairfax CEO Greg Hywood. Greg Hywood. That's not right. I said Greg Hywood. No, Greg Hywood. Thank you. Who has presided over a series of cuts which have cost hundreds of journalists their jobs and spawned books with titles like Killing Fairfax and The Rise and Fall of Fairfax and Fairfax If I Did It and I skull-fucked Fairfax into oblivion and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. And Hywood had the job of breaking the news of the proposed deal to Fairfax employees, which isn't an easy job. It's a moment that demands empathy and compassion, and I'm sure Hywood workshopped a number of ways to best explain the news to his nervous staff, who understandably automatically associate Hywood's mere presence with misery and despair, sort of like Alan Rickman in Love Actually, or Alan Rickman in Truly Madly Deeply, or in Harry Potter, or as the voice of Marvin in Hitchhiker's... Really, any time Alan Rickman was on screen. But of all the ways to start his speech to staff, Hywood went with, "I'm here announcing my own redundancy for a change." Tough crowd. Turns out that what people don't go for is a joke about how funny it is that you're losing your job with an estimated $8.2 million payout and a Maserati, and they're losing their jobs with not that. But the particular concern with this takeover is for the journalistic assets at Fairfax, especially as Nine has made it pretty clear that their primary interest is in Fairfax's property listing site Domain and their streaming service Stan, which is of course home to my personal favourite series, My Mum's Hotter Than Me. But this brings us to the key questions. It's a real show. This brings us to the key questions raised by this whole situation, media diversity, as seen here in Channel 10's Pilot Week. And hey, let's not judge this group of largely bland white men for being large, bland white men. Let's judge Channel 10 for putting Rove back on television with nothing other than a plan to air his cover version of Hey Hey It's Saturday. You know, because whenever I'm at an RSL Variety Night fundraiser, all I ever think is, if only I could watch the Community Kazoo Orchestra and the amazing Acro Cats from the comfort of my own home. But the most obvious issue about media diversity is whether the acquisition of Fairfax will limit their scrutiny of Channel 9. Because while even a Channel 9-owned Pravda could not have saved Russell Gilbert live, media concentration remains a concern. Because whether Fairfax starts running positive reviews for the reality TV shows Channel 9 airs in place of anything with a script is one thing. But a media company like Nine has shareholders who might care that they've lost the cricket to Channel 7 and who might also care about Sam Newman's latest sexism scandal. I assume. I mean, we've been on air now for like 10, 12 minutes, so by now he's probably said something like, women can't fish, and if you can't cast a line, can you really cast a vote? I love fishing. I love fishing, and you will too, at Reg's Rigs, Baits and Fishing Factory. I've got no credibility and will sell anything. But joking aside, at a serious level, in the midst of the Me Too movement, people in the entertainment industry have never been under more pressure to be accountable for their actions. And in that environment, a major media company, Fairfax, which broke the allegations against former Nine personality Don Burke, has just been bought by the company that employed Don Burke. And while reporting on Nine is one concern, Nine's seeming indifference to Fairfax's serious investigative journalism raises the possibility that Fairfax newspapers will not continue to exist, at least in the same way they do now. And that goes to media diversity and concentration, because numerous studies have found Australia has one of the most concentrated media markets in the world. And the only reason this takeover was possible is because the Turnbull government removed legislative restrictions like the 2 out of 3 rule, which prevented newspapers and TV stations merging, because, as a wise man once said, "There ain't no way I'm ever gonna love you. Now don't be sad, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad." And when Meatloaf makes a little more sense than your elected leader, you know you have a problem. Because I don't know whether journalism will survive in this country, although I suspect it will in some form or another. And sure, maybe that means fewer newspapers and more online sources. And yes, that would mean every serious article got accompanied by a quiz on which Minogue sister I am and updates on which flavour of Dorito matches my star sign. Heads up, I'm a Danny Capricorn chip. But when a serious journalism company gets swallowed by an entertainment company, we should all be worried, because news and entertainment don't often mix that well. I mean, unless, of course, you're Li Lin Chen. God, I miss her already. We'll be right back.